Hola, hola, ¿cómo estás? Hello, how are you, my slow Baja amigos? Today's heaping dose of gratitude goes out to Raul and Caroline from Rancho La Bayota in Tecate, Baja California. They have a spectacular 2,800-acre guest ranch with horses and it's a beautiful, beautiful piece of property in a beautiful valley, no cell signal, no Wi-Fi. It's magnificent to just get away from it all, dining under the candles. It's really lovely, a little fire pit for sipping some tequila after dinner. And I'm recording from my cabin at the property. The sheep were just grazing right out in front. I thought it'd be fun to record this while you could hear the tinkling of their bells and the munching of their flock of sheep, but they've moved on. Horses were just trotting by a second ago. Anyways, I wanted to share the sounds of this space rather than try to block the sounds out of where I am, which is what I'm usually trying to do. Today's show is with Paula Pijoan of Vinos Pijoan, and more than being part of the winemaking family of Vinos Pijoan, Paula is an expert in native plants of Baja and a fierce advocate of keeping the native plants in with all the development of all the wineries. So surrounding the vines, lining the lanes down the vines, the interior of the vineyards with native plants to keep feeding all those bees, keep feeding all that wildlife that depends on it. And Paula is a fierce advocate of that, and it was a real joy to speak with her. She's also a practitioner of the Japanese art of forest bathing and leads forest bathing trips. So if you want to check that out, get yourself immersed in nature, Paula Pijoan. Enjoy the show. Hey, this is Michael Emery. Thanks for tuning into the Slow Baja. This podcast is powered by Tequila Fortaleza, handmade in small batches, and hands down, my favorite tequila. Hey, I want to tell you about your new must-have accessory for your next Baja trip. Benchmark Maps has released a beautiful, beautiful Baja California road and recreation atlas. It's a 72-page large format book of detailed maps and recreation guides that makes the perfect planning tool for exploring Baja. Pick yours up at benchmarkmaps.com. So maybe you can just say hello and tell me your name and tell me where we are.
Okay, so my name is Paula Pijoan. We are at Vinos Pijoan in Valle de Guadalupe.
What are you drinking? You've got a white here and I'm drinking a rosé.
I am drinking, I think it's a Chenin Blanc with Sauvignon, I believe. Part of the whites that my dad and my sister make here in Pijoan.
Well, okay, let's get right to it. Okay. Hello, how are you?
I'm good. I'm going to take a sip of my glass.
Ching ching.
Ching ching. Thank you for the interview.
Well, thank you for making time. Hello, Slow Baja listeners. Today I've barged into Vinos Pijoan and forced my way into a conversation with Paula, who was doing her best to ignore me, but she was twice recommended by good friends, and I had to come and see her, and she's been very kind to make a little time. Today I've got a beautiful cheese plate in front of me, so if you hear me munching along in between long soliloquies, you'll know what's going on here. It's a beautiful day. It's not too hot. I found Paula working in the fields with her beautiful dog, Pax?
Pax, yeah.
Pax. Tell me a little bit about this place.
About the winery?
Yes, your father's midlife crisis.
Exactly. So we got this place precisely 20 years ago in 2002. As you said, it was my dad's midlife crisis. He was about to turn 50. He really did not like his job at all. He was a vet and he always wanted to make wine, but nobody else was making wine except for professional enologists. And he took a course in 1999 of how to make your own wine. He started making his own wine in the garage. They found a little cheap place in Valle de Guadalupe back when it was still cheap, or at least affordable. And we got it, and I would say like the whole family's life changed in so many ways because he completely turned a direction in his life. For me, it was my introduction to the rural life, to the plant world, to tending the earth and how challenging that can be if you have no idea of what you're doing. And here we are 20 years later, drinking good wine, working more than ever, but understanding more where we're at and the challenges and the love that it requires to be and to thrive here.
Well, you've created quite a beautiful place out of this. If you're telling me you were amateurs, but work hard for 20 years, you've done something amazing.
Thank you so much.
Tell Slow Baja, the Slow Baja world, what you have here. We're sitting in the patio of your beautiful restaurant. So you have food. You make your wine. Mm-hmm. Do you have, you receive guests? You have lodging?
Yes. So we have one small house with two bedrooms, and that's about it. We got this place. The house was already there. It had 3 small houses, and we've built around them, and like that's where we grew them, so that we have the winery now. And for us, it's always been. We don't live here. We've never lived here, but we have spent a lot of time here, and for us, it has always been our refuge from the city. So we've never wanted for this place to become very touristy, very big, very busy. So it's always chill. I mean, today's a Wednesday. It's just you and I today. But even on weekends, it's a respite from the big places and the busy places of Valle de Guadalupe. We love nature. Like that's what unites all of my family. Like since we were kids, it's me and 2 other sisters. And then the wines are actually named after us and my mom and my grandma. So there's a big story there. But I think I would be more interested in focusing about the nature part of it. And we've tried to make a haven, I would say, not just for ourselves, but for the visitors, and not only for the humans, but also for the wildlife. And that's what we are trying to create, and it's happening.
Well, let's talk about that. So I walked in, and you're transferring native plants, food for the pollinators. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about. You're an oceanographer. You studied oceanography in college. I checked up on you. Your father's of Spanish descent, but you grew up here.
Yeah.
In Ensenada?
We got here when I was 6 years old, and my parents are from Mexico City, but yeah, the family, we grew up here.
So tell me about plants, and tell me about native plants and how that became really your focus. And I'm looking at just the vineyard behind you, and you've got it planted full of native greens.
Yeah. It's been a big journey. It was interesting because I never ever in my life cared about plants at all. I was totally into the ocean. I studied oceanography. I was fully into surfing. I started surfing in the year 2000. I was there when there wasn't that many women in the water, and it was such an adventure. Like it just taught me so much, and basically the ocean was my soul life. That's what I did. And then I started a master's degree in ecosystem management in 2006. And during one of the classes, they took us out to the fields, and I got introduced to the plants. And at the same time, my mom was trying to make gardens here in Pijoan. And she was using the typical plants, the roses, the bougainvilleas, the whatever. And all of them were dying, and we didn't know why, because we didn't understand the climate. And I was noticing that around our lot, which was all virgin and all pristine before and back then, it was all full of plants, and it was obvious that nobody was tending them, nobody was watering them, and the birds were there, the quail were singing. It was just so full of life, and what we were planting wasn't full of life. So that kind of made me, sparked my curiosity, and that's how I discovered that in California it's already been over 50 years of, I wouldn't say a trend, but a curiosity in gardening with native plants. It has become a trend in the late years. So yeah, 2007, I fully got into. It was just a huge spark. I didn't care about plants, and then all of a sudden, I only cared about plants, and here I am.
Did it affect your surfing? Did it affect your relationship with the water?
I do not surf anymore. That's all I can say.
Wow.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's a long story, but it was so clear that I just wanted to be inland. My heart just had enough of, it was my love affair with the ocean had been complete. That's the only way I can explain it. It's like I had given it my all, and he or she had given its all, and every part of me just wanted to be in the land, tending the plants and around trees. So it was a big shift that I didn't see coming.
Amazing. So you were involved with the California Native Plant Association. Do I have that right? What's the correct acronym for that? California Native Plant Society.
CNPS.
Do you know anything about Annetta Carter and her study of Baja plants in the 20s?
No.
Oh, she's an amazing woman. I'm looking for somebody to tell me her story. She's passed, obviously, but she came and charted all the native plants in Baja as a gringa, and in the 1920s and 30s. So just interesting. I'm looking for somebody who's got Annetta Carter stories to share with me. But on to you and forest bathing. Let's talk about that.
Okay. So my interest with the plants came along with a deep personal crisis, similar to what many people are living right now with the pandemic. I started a little bit before. I was studying, I don't know how to make it short, but basically I wanted to help the environment. That's why I studied ecosystem management, because I wanted to use science to be applied in projects that could help the environment. I was seeing so much degradation around the shores, on the beaches, and even here around Valle de Guadalupe. Even back then, I was seeing how much was being destroyed because of development. So I studied this master's thinking that I was going to find answers there, and I didn't find that many. Like policy answers and regulatory answers in Mexico, they take a long time and you don't usually see results. So I had a profound personal, I would even call it a spiritual crisis, that sent me to a personal quest. I actually started meditating big time back then. And because I was feeling so down and so misplaced, I started going out into the hills of the native vegetation here in around Ensenada. And I was doing nothing. Like I would just sit in front of a shrub and just do nothing but observe it and contemplate it and not think about anything. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew it made me feel better. And I started realizing that going into nature was the only thing that was making me feel better out of the despair or the confusion I was in. I did go to spiritual retreats for a few months at a time, and I became a meditation teacher. And at the same time, I was teaching people about native plants, like in separate places, no? Some people were being taught meditation inside of the room, and other people were being taught about plants, but very in a scientific way. Like this plant is named blah, 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 and like a lot of concepts. And I was like, no, how do I join nature and meditation, nature and healing in one package? And all of a sudden I discovered the concept of forest bathing, which is a Japanese practice that's growing big time worldwide. And it's precisely, it's going into nature. Usually, or at least at the beginning, in guided walks that are not about learning concepts. It's not about learning names of trees or bird watching. It's about going into nature for therapeutic processes, to heal, to recharge, to replenish, to relax.
The same reasons I come to Baja.
And it doesn't have to be a forest. It can be a desert. It can be anywhere. Yeah. So I became a guide, and I'm so happy I do that.
Yes, please. What are you pouring?
Domenica. This is a 2018 vintage. It's a base of Grenache with Syrah and Carignan.
Fabulous.
Salud.
So, how is this practice received here, and who do you get to come with you? I mean, Leda, my new best friend from the Adobe food truck, raves about you.
Oh, it was so funny because I got certified as a forest bathing guide in Santa Rosa, California. There is a...
Very close to where I live.
You guys have amazing forests. It was so beautiful. I think it was Sugarloaf Hill or Sugarloaf Mountains. And I got certified in 2017, but I had to do my practices. So my first walk is where Leda was. And who comes? Actually, most of the time I cater to locals, because it's kind of hard to cater to both groups at the same time. I don't like doing bilingual groups. So sometimes I am searched by Americans, for example, and I can cater for private groups and offer it in English, but mostly I do it for locals. And who comes is just more and more people are starting to realize that they miss nature, that they need it. And people are so inside the cities that they don't even know where to start. They don't even know where to go. Baja is complicated because there's a lot of open spaces, but they're private. It's not like in the U.S. that you have a lot of national parks or state parks or city parks. We don't have that much here. They're mostly private, so you have to know somebody that knows somebody to know where to go. And that's part of where I come along, and the guided walks really help. The mantra that we learned as a guide is like, our role is, because it's called forest bathing or forest therapy. And our mantra is, the guide opens the door and nature is the therapist. Or the forest is the therapist. And it's really hard to put into words, but it's an exploration of nature through the 5 senses. So that's all I do. I offer invitations to people to listen to the bird that we can listen to right now.
We're listening to a dove right now.
Exactly. And feel the wind in our skin and notice the colors or the light all around us. And that just naturally relaxes us so quickly.
Paula's absolutely glowing right now. I hate to say it. You're just a huge smile and eyes are sparkling. I'm starting to blush. It might be the second glass of wine here, folks. So can you walk me through? Is it something that you can describe? Can you walk me through visually what happens if I were to come on a forest bathing excursion with you?
Well, I think a bit of it, the beginning of it is what we just shared, no? Like it's an invitation to explore with the senses. So you could say we begin with a meditation opening the senses. And even though all of us have 5 senses, we don't usually pay attention to them. They're so numbed out of our system because we're always thinking. We do not stop thinking. So we don't hear the birds, we don't feel the wind, we don't notice the ground or the earth under our feet. And that's what happens on a forest bathing walk. And I would say like mostly people become children again, because that's the way children explore nature. That's the way children play with nature. They don't care about learning concepts or being serious about it. They're just fully experiencing the place in the moment, in the now. And that's what happens for people, and it's beautiful to see. That's why I glow.
Okay. Well, we will. I will ask you at the end here where people can book, if that's something that you're open and offering walks now. I would definitely like to make the Slow Baja community aware of how they can book you, because I really feel you've touched on something. As we are all, I have my phone right here in my hands, folks. We are all looking at our phones all the time. Everybody in San Francisco, where I live, has this thing in their hand, and they're looking at it. Mm-hmm. And they're not, as you say, aware of the birds, the beautiful climate, the smell of the plants that they're walking by, as you said, the 5 senses. And they're not in their body when they're in their space. I always say, be where you are when you're there. That's what Slow Baja is in a nutshell. It's beautiful. Be where you are when you're there.
Exactly. I mean, it's called mindfulness. We can call it however we want, but it's having our mind where our bodies are at. That's what the way I explain it. No, like our bodies can be here, but our minds are elsewhere. So we're kind of sleepwalking most of the time, and we need reminders and we need guidance. And nature is a beautiful guide. Like she usually brings us, like, hey, listen to the bird. Hey, feel the wind. And I mean, fortunately for me, the pandemic has definitely sparked an interest and a need in so many of us for these practices. We need to find balance. All of us are overworked, overstretched, overstressed. We have our hands in so many things at the same time. And I just think it's unnatural. Like, no other species on planet Earth is demanding so much of themselves like we are. It's just exhausted. We're all exhausted, and so we need these moments of pausing and arriving in our bodies and just remembering and feeling what being alive is like.
Wow. I think I want to leave it right there, folks. That could be all you need to know about this right here. Holy Toledo. Okay, we're going to take a break.
Sorry, I told you I was always in profound spaces.
Hey, do you wish you had joined us on the Nora 500? Well, here's your chance. It's double the mileage, double the fun, double the parties, double the dirt. It is the Nora Mexican 1000. We're going to drive by day. We're going to party by night. I'm pouring Fortaleza tequila. April 30th through May 6th, 2022. We're driving the entire peninsula. You don't want to miss out on this one. Again, if I can do it in my 1971 Toyota Land Cruiser, totally stock, you can do it in any modern 4x4. The Nora Mexican 1000. It's the happiest race on earth. Check it out at nora.com, NORRA.com, or on Slow Baja. Here at Slow Baja, we can't wait to drive our old Land Cruiser south of the border. And when we go, we'll be going with Baja Bound Insurance. Their website's fast and easy to use. Check them out at bajabound.com. That's bajabound.com, serving Mexico travelers since 1994. I'd like to come back to your winery a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And tell me about your father. Tell me about your sisters. Tell me about the wines named after them all and what people will find when they come here. Explain, give me a forest bath right here in your beautiful space, because it truly is beautiful.
Thank you. Okay, so my father is from Catalonia originally. Catalunya region in the west of Spain that has always wanted to be separate from Spain.
Absolutely.
They have a different language. We don't speak Spanish there. It's Catalonian. His mom and dad came running away from the civil war in the 30s and arrived in Mexico as exiles. So my dad was born in Mexico, but full on like a second generation, I would say, Catalonian. His first language is Catalonian, but he was raised in Mexico City. But you obviously, as a Catalonian, where they are deep in the Mediterranean, he was raised with Mediterranean values and a love for Mediterranean food and a love for Mediterranean wine. So it's interesting because Baja California is very similar to the Mediterranean, like all these rocks and the Mediterranean climate where we have rains in the winter and summer droughts. As I said, like eventually he started making wine. He's a scientist. I mean, although he's a vet, he was a vet by profession, he's a researcher. He was a researcher in the veterinary areas, but a very scientific-minded person. So when he was taught how to make wine, he was very methodical about it, and he always followed the recipe, and he did it very carefully. So he was able to reproduce, like he started making good wines, and fortunately he was able to reproduce the good wines. It wasn't like a one-time thing. So people started looking for our wines. It wasn't a planned thing. And the first wine was named after my mom, Leonora. And when the place became more famous, he had to make more wines. And he's like, okay, I run out of names. Well, I have 3 daughters. I'll just name them after them. So and the wines kind of have the idea is that the wines are made similar to the personality of each one of the women in the family.
Okay, let's get into that then.
Yeah.
So tell me about your youngest sister.
So Silvana, which I think is the one that I'm drinking right now, it's a white. The wine was made when she was 9 years old, or she was a kid. So it's a light, I think it's a Chenin and a Sauvignon without barrel, like nothing serious about it. Light, fresh, citrusy, floral, easy to drink. It's beautiful paired with ceviches and salads and a lot of the seafood that we have here in Baja. We love it. I really like it. So it really represented, the identity of a girl. And my mom was the opposite. My mom and my mom Leonora and my grandma. The name of the wine is Mara, which means mom in Catalan. Well, they're more full-bodied, more mature. They spend more time inside the casks. So that's the idea, right? Like each wine has a personality. And my wine, which is Paula, I've always been like an outside kind of person. So my dad made a young red that you can drink, that's beautiful on the beach or on a hot day like today. It's not too serious. It only goes in the barrel for I think 6 months or even less. And it's a blend of a lot of grapes. Like I don't even remember, which also represents me because I'm into so many things at a time. But it has Merlot, Petit Syrah, and it's vinified as a grape. Let me remember the name. Whole berry fermentation.
Okay.
That's the word. Which brings up very different flavors like banana and Tootsie Pop and candy. And it's just like a little bit crazy. And it does represent me a bit.
Cheers to that.
Salud.
Cheers to that. You've taken the philosophy of stewardship, stewarding the land, caring for the plants, the animals, the what have you, very seriously here. So I'm guessing it's biodynamic. There are not pesticides or weed killers or what have you. You've integrated nature. Can you talk a little bit about your philosophy in how this property is cared for?
So my mom comes from a family of full-on nature lovers. Like everyone in her family has 9 dogs and 6 cats and that kind of family.
There are a few dogs here, I've noticed.
There's a few dogs.
Packs I met, but there are 3 or 4 when I parked.
There's always at least 5 dogs in Pijoan, and there are always rescues, and there's always more coming. We don't know where they come from, but we always have new dogs, and they are our guard dogs. We don't have... I mean, they have a job. They take care of the property so well, and they love receiving people and stuff. But anyway, a lot of the practices in agriculture involve an ideology of a war between your crop and the nature that wants to eat it. And the way most people wage that war is with pesticides and with rodent killers and with all these things that we hardly kill a spider in our house. So my mom was always like, there's no way we're going to kill the topos, the gophers, or the ardillas, the squirrels. And we have never put any herbicides at all. Pesticides, hardly. Not pesticides, but sometimes we used copper for a mold that grows on grapes. But for the past maybe 5 years, we've gone fully organic. And it's not biodynamic, but it is organic. And that's my sister is actually the one that's more right now in charge of tending the vineyard. I tend the native plants. My relationship with wine is that I drink it. I don't get so involved in the production of it.
All right. Well, you've got lots of native plants here, and I understand that you're a consultant about native plants.
Yeah, so after I did my master's, I became so passionate about native plants, and it went from a full-time hobby and passion. Well, it wasn't. It was a hobby, and I had to have other jobs. But eventually I found my niche, and it's like a niche that not many people are holding. It was so good for me because it was just an empty niche, and my hobby just became a service that I could provide to others. So what I was telling you before is the trend in most places is that people buy land. We could talk about Valle de Guadalupe, for example, buy pristine land that's covered in native vegetation, all these beautiful plants that are actually the home of all the songbirds and the squirrels and even pumas. I mean, there's so much wildlife here. And people buy the land, they fence it, and they bulldoze the whole thing. It's just a practice that has been ingrained in, I don't know if Mexican DNA or human DNA. But the word they use in Mexico is limpiar el terreno. It's called clearing the land or cleaning the land, which implies the land is dirty. So if you buy a land and somebody asks you do you want to clean your land? Anybody would say, yes, I want to clean my land. And that actually means bulldozing the whole thing and getting rid of all the vegetation. And with the vegetation, there goes all the animals. So fortunately, some people are trying to do things differently. And that's where I come along and show them you do not need to clear your land. If you want to develop it, you can clear the spaces that you want to build in or the spaces that you're going to put a vineyard. But even in the vineyard, it's super proven by Berkeley scientists. Vineyards that are near native vegetation have a lot less pests. because nature is always in an equilibrium, in a balance. So if there's a little bug that's eating the grapes, then the other bugs that are inside the native habitat, they're gonna go and eat the pest. A pest is only a bug that grew its population beyond what's normal, and like nobody's eating it, nobody's killing it. When there's a healthy ecosystem around it, the balance is achieved almost immediately. So even people that want to build vineyards, they can leave patches of native vegetation inside the vineyard, which is what I'm doing with a few of my clients. And it looks beautiful. It really helps solve erosion problems as well, because natives really hold the soil when the big rains come. And the pest problem really diminishes, and it's like a lot of scientific papers have proven that.
What do you want to say about the Valle development, water, what have you? How do you want to address those crushing issues?
I don't know. I guess Valle de Guadalupe, it's a microcosm of what's happening in other places in the world. It's just rampant development. Because the wine industry flourished so much, suddenly there was I forgot the word in English, but people needed a place to stay. So it's not just that the wineries are destroying the ecosystem, is that everybody wants to put an Airbnb in their land right now. And you just see these explosions of little tiny baby cabins all over the place. And even though there is a regulation for Valle de Guadalupe, most people are not paying attention, and the government is not actually working at all in applying that regulation or those regulations, which involve a density, how many houses you can actually build per hectare. There's a beautiful regulation about not building massive walls around your property so that the landscape is not affected. And that's not happening. Like all these massive gray cement walls people come from the city, and instead of wanting to adapt to the countryside, they're bringing their city with them, because they do not know what rural life is. And what could I say? Like, if you're coming to a rural area, I mean, I don't think your community would do it. I think it's more of a city kind of person. But research what rural life is and build according to the context that you are arriving at. Don't destroy it and turn the place into a city, which is what's happening in so many places around.
Well, on that profound, I realized you were going to be profound. I knew it.
I am.
On that, we're going to change gears again here, and just maybe you can tell me about a few places that you really love here in the Valle, that hopefully Slow Baja listeners will come and see, and not in such droves that they destroy it. So just if you're willing to share a few places that you really love, people who are doing wonderful things here, I'd love to hear them.
Well, I mean, the message is hopeful, because I can recommend you, of course, Mogor Badan. Natalia Badan has been one of the pioneers in Valle de Guadalupe, and she's been doing things the right way since the very beginning. And she's left the native plants, and she has organic, and she's never catered for the big tourism world. So it's a very authentic kind of place.
That's appointment only, folks. Appointment only. I'll have the link on the site, Slow Baja, if you want to visit Natalie Badan.
Sí.
Okay.
And she has beautiful, really good wine as well. I mean, Drew Deckman is there, so who wouldn't want to go? So that's a basic that one has to go to. Tres Mujeres is also a small scale, full of heart project from Yvette Bayard. And again, very homely, respectful of the landscape, respectful of the place. Adobe Guadalupe also has those notions. And where I would say that, I mean, it sounds very grim, like what I said before sounds very grim, but this is where it turns hopeful. A lot of what's been happening, hasn't been because people are mean or evil. They were just lacking information. People from the city come and develop like in the city because they didn't know they could do it in another way. So I just started working with two developers that are big in Valle de Guadalupe, Julian Salas and Eric Castro, that used to do things very differently, but they discover that they can do it like there's a different way of doing it. So now we're rescuing the native plants from their properties instead of just bulldozing them, moving them from place to place. So the land is cleared for the architecture, but the plants are rescued. And these are people that thought very differently a year ago. They were bulldozing big time a lot of the places, but something happened that they discovered they could do it differently, and they have an impact. They are very much in touch with the regular landscapers, no, not landscapers, regular developers, and they're pushing for things to happen differently because they themselves are also seeing that Valle de Guadalupe is going in a lot of us say it's not a positive direction because it's so unstructured and so undirected.
And unsustainable.
Unsustainable beyond unsustainable. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the drought and all these things, we have to take into account.
Okay. Well, on that note, Paula, if people want to come here, let's go through the number of ways that people can find out what's happening here, the social media, websites, what have you. Let's talk about a little bit about how people can come and see what's happening here, and then tell me how people can come to be in touch with you, and if they want to visit nature with you, go on a nature walk, book a trip for 6 friends in English or Spanish. Let's talk about that.
Okay, so the first question was where they could find information about Valle de Guadalupe.
About here.
Oh, Pijoan.
Yes.
Okay.
Pijoan.
Perfect. That's an easy one. So you can find us on social media as Vinos Pijoan. That's Pijoan. And that's our webpage as well, vinospijoan.com. I'm happy, like when you arrived at our place, you found me doing gardening, and I'm excited because in a few months, maybe a year, we don't know, but what I didn't share about the wine that we make is that we're making a wine that has native plant extracts. It's a kind of a vermouth, and we're making a garden with native plants that are used in the vermouth. So we want to make, if any of your listeners are interested in finding the meeting point between the native plants and wine, this garden is going to be it. It's going to be a walk that really sparks your senses because most of the plants are aromatic. For our intention, or my intention, is for people to see that for wine to be existent in our region, there has to be an ecosystem. The ecosystem is not comprised only of olive trees and vine plants. We need an ecosystem. An ecosystem involves plants, it involves animals, it involves the geology, so that we have proper weather patterns and rain. And I will find a way that's easy to understand. And it will be explained in the garden. My idea is for people that come to Vinos Pijoan, that they leave with a beautiful wine tasting, but they can also have a sneak peek or a little view of what Baja ecosystems are, why they're so important for them to exist, and how they relate to the winemaking industry. So any of your listeners will be able to see that here in Vinos Pijoan, probably in 6 months. We hope that walk is concluded. And as for my personal projects, my forest bathing project is called Respira Bosque, which means in Spanish, or the equivalent would be like, breathe the forest. So Respira Bosque in Instagram and Facebook, and respirabosque.com. I've been offering walks since 2017. And as you say, so I usually have one per month. It's usually in Spanish, but a lot of people look for me for private groups, and I can cater for whatever need, different places, and I haven't had anybody that hasn't enjoyed the experience so far, fortunately.
She says, smiling with her eyes.
Again.
Well, if Polo at Baja Adventures and Leda at the Adobe Food Truck recommend you highly, those are 2 people that I truly admire both for in their own right. So you're highly recommended. So that's a Slow Baja approved, folks. We've got the dogs moving in. I think we're going to wrap up our conversation. You've been very generous. It's beautiful here in the Valle, folks. I say, come and see it well. I don't know how to phrase it. Come and see it soon.
Yes.
Sooner rather than later. When you can meet people like Paula, and she will hand you 3 leaves. Can you tell me a little bit about the 3 leaves that you handed me?
So that is a white sage leaf, a California scrub sage leaf, and a Cleveland sage leaf.
And they all are aromatic and beautiful.
Yes.
And you told me to go entertain myself for a half hour, order a glass of wine, have a smell of these beautiful, beautiful plants, and you'll be right with me. And it's I can't say in all of my years that somebody's handed me some leaves and say, go entertain yourself for a few minutes. I'll be right with you. But it's lovely. This is lovely.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Slow Baja, I'm giving you a sniff right now. All right, Paula, gracias.
Gracias por la invitación. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Well, folks, that conversation takes me right back to that beautiful spot, sipping rosé all day with Paula and talking about forest bathing. You just don't get to have enough conversations about forest bathing these days. Thanks again to Ian Lastly, Polo at Baja Adventures, and Leda at Adobe Food Truck for recommending Paula for a Slow Baja conversation. If you have somebody you'd like to hear on Slow Baja, let me know. You can message me at Slow Baja on Instagram or Facebook, or you can certainly hit that contact button at slowbaja.com. And while you're at slowbaja.com, well, drop a taco in the tank. Hit that donate button. Check out the merch in the Slow Baja store. I've got hats in stock, all sizes, all styles. T-shirts, probably by the time you hear this show, are in. So those long out of stock larges, yep, folks, they're back. They're back in black. They're back in white. They're black sweatshirts. They're back. Grab them while you can. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. Thanks for the folks who have dropped taco in the tank. I'll be acknowledging you all in the next show. And until then, to borrow from my old friend, Baja lover, motor vehicle lover, Steve McQueen, Baja's life. Anything that happens before or after is just waiting. Have I told you about my friend True Miller? You've probably heard the podcast, but let me tell you, her vineyard, Adobe Guadalupe Winery, is spectacular. From the breakfast at her communal table, bookended to an intimate dinner at night, their house-bred Azteca horses, Solomon the horseman, will get you on a ride that'll just change your life. The food, the setting, the pool, it's all spectacular. AdobeGuadalupe.com. For appearing on Slow Baja today, our guest will receive the beautiful Benchmark Map 72-page Baja Road and Recreation Atlas. Do not go to Baja without this, folks. You never know when your GPS is going to crap out, and you're going to want a great map in your lap. Trust me.